Sewing Bees, I'm Sookie and welcome to the Beehive. In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to make the border tea towel. This border tea towel is perfect for all levels. There is a PDF set of instructions that you can download and print off if you'd like, so that you can follow along with the video. There will be a link in the description to grab that. I do want to thank today's sponsor, which is All About Blanks, your place for blanks. They provided the most beautiful cotton tea towel, and you'll get a chance to see that in action. There also will be a link in the description so that you can go grab your very own All About Blanks tea towel. So grab your machine and let's get stitching. Like I mentioned before, there are PDF printable instructions that you can go grab right now and follow along with the video. You are going to need a towel. We're using an 18 by 28 inch flat weave dish towel from All About Blanks. You are going to need a piece of fabric for your border. Now let's talk for a minute about border directions. Some materials like these are non-directional, and those are easy. You'll just follow the instructions for cutting. But then when it comes to something a little more directional, like these puppy dogs, you really got to pay attention to your cutting. So we'll go over that in just a minute. Now let's talk about supplies. You're going to need the presser foot that comes with your sewing machine, but you're also going to want to have the edge stitch foot, which sometimes it's called the edge joining foot. This is going to help you get a perfect top stitch along the top edge of your bordered tea towel. Of course, some thread, and want it to be matching in the bobbin. Something to clip your threads, and I love, of course, my Sookie Sews Easy Hook and Snips. And then you're going to need a rotary cutter, a ruler, and a rotary mat. Also an iron and a pressing station. The needles that we're using today are universal size 80-12, just a good basic needle. You'll also need some flower head straight pins and some wonder clips. Now, when it comes to cutting a non-directional material, it's really easy. The measurements that you need are going to be 21 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall. And since it's non-directional, it doesn't really matter where you cut the material, just as long as when you're finished, the width is 21 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall. Now, if you're a brand new sewer, I would recommend that you use a non-directional print. It's just going to be easier and you're not going to have to worry about lining up or positioning. The other cool thing is once you've made your 5.5 inch cut of the width of the material, you basically can get 2 of the borders out of that cut. Now, if you want to do something a little more challenging and use a border print like these cute puppy dogs by Tula Pink, then you just want to pay attention to where you're cutting. Remember, your width is going to be 21 inches wide and it's going to be 5.5 inches tall. You're going to want to find the center of whatever the pattern is that you want to have, because keep in mind that when you're finished, you're going to see that center pattern, we'll just say the little poodle here, in the center of your towel. So now the next thing is just to make sure that you have enough seam allowance on the top and bottom. On the top, you want to make sure you have 1/2 inch. At the bottom, you want to make sure you have 1 inch. And other than that, it's pretty easy. Now let's prepare our towel. At the back of the All About Blanks towels, you're going to find a sticker, which you're just going to want to remove. I also want to point out that you have a loop at the top of your towel. That's going to help you out in your kitchen. And then at the bottom, you just have the basic hem. And that's where we're going to be adding our border. Let's go ahead and press our towel to remove all of the creases. Remember I said there was a 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top of your border? Well, now what we're going to do is fold down that 1/2 inch to create a little hem. And you can use the measurements on your pressing station. You can use a ruler. You can mark it with a marking pen and a ruler, however you want. But usually when I get an idea of what a 1/2 inch looks like, I kind of just am able to gauge the rest of the little hem. Next, you're going to center the right side bottom edge of the border to the wrong side bottom edge of the towel. So let's go ahead and find our centers, and we can use Wonder Clips to mark that. And now let's go ahead and align our centers and continue using the Wonder Clips to secure the bottom edge of the towel to the bottom edge of the border. And now let's head to our sewing machine to set it up and stitch this bottom seam. Want to make sure you have the matching thread in the top and the bottom and a brand new needle and your standard universal presser foot. We are going to be stitching this at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and we're just going to stitch that bottom seam. And you only want to stitch from the beginning of the towel to the end of the towel. No need to stitch on the border at this point. And I do recommend that you use the back stitch at the beginning of your seam to help secure it. And just like the beginning of your seam, we're going to backstitch at the end of your seam to secure it. And then you can clip your thread tails at the bottom and also the top on the front and the back. And you'll find if you're using the hook and snip, you will discover really soon why those are such wonderful little clippers. All right, nice job on the 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now let's go ahead and do a little pressing. We just want to press our seam flat. It's always a good idea to sew a seam and then press a seam. I like to say that it makes your thread and your fabric become best friends, but really what it's doing is it's relaxing the thread into the material. Now you're going to turn the towel wrong side facing up, and you know it's the wrong side because we can see our loop. And we're going to fold this so that the seam allowance is facing towards the border. And you're going to press. We want that seam allowance facing the border so that ultimately it will get completely concealed. As you're pressing, just ensure that that 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top of your border is still nice and pressed. And now I want you to turn your towel so that it's right side facing up to do a little bit more pressing. Now to completely conceal that seam allowance at the bottom, we're going to fold the border towards the towel, the front side of the towel, and we're going to press. Now you're going to want to make sure that the bottom of the border and the bottom of the towel are perfectly aligned. You're just going to kind of roll it with your fingertips at the bottom, and again, just make sure that that 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top of your border is continuing to remain pressed. In this next step, we want to fold and press the short sides of the border, tucking the raw edges between the border and the towel. Now, I found the best way to do this was to first wrap the border around to the back side of the towel and give it a press. That immediately creates a nice, perfect fold, which then I can tuck behind the border and in between the border and the towel. And now let's just repeat that on the other side. For this next step, you're going to need both your wonder clips and your flower head straight pins. And what we'll be doing is securing the top folded edge of the border to the front of the towel with our pins. You'll notice that the flower head portion of the pin is towards the towel. And this way, as we're stitching the border to the towel in just a few minutes, it'll be ideal so that the pins can come out quite easily. And now let's transition over to our wonder clips. And we're going to be using the wonder clips to secure the sides of the border to the towel. Now, the reason I'm using wonder clips on the sides versus straight pins is simply because there is bulk in the side bottom corner of the towel, and it's just a lot easier to use the clips in this area, whereas we couldn't use clips along the top, we needed straight pins. We're going to begin stitching just the side borders, and we're going to use our standard presser foot for this. You're going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch in from the folded edge and start at the very top, and you will want to backstitch just to secure that seam. Now, once you get to the end where that bulky hem is, you're going to want to just make sure that you sew nice and slow and use your hand wheel if you need to. You just don't want to break a needle, bend a needle, or do any harm to your machine by going over that bulky seam. And then when you do get to the end of the border, just backstitch a little bit, raise your presser foot, and clip your thread tails. And now you'll really get a chance to clip your thread tails if you have those easy hook and snips. You'll see that with the hook end, you can get really close to the base of the fabric and you can clip your thread tails exactly at the base. They're awesome. All right, let's go to the other side. Now this time we're beginning with that bulky seam, so I want you to ease into the stitch, raise your presser foot, lower it, and only use the hand wheel to get your seam started because you are stitching over such a bulky seam. You might even have to reposition your presser foot to really get it going, and that's okay. Once you get stitching, you'll be on your way. Same as before, we're doing about 1/8 of an inch in from the folded edge. And just be nice and consistent with your seam. If the top hem of your border is flipping out, just tuck it underneath to make sure it lays nice and flat. Just like before, we're going to backstitch at the end of that seam, raise your foot, and clip your thread tails. Once the sides are stitched, you're going to change your presser foot from the standard foot to the edge stitch foot. I love this foot. It allows you to do perfect top stitching among many other things that you can do with it. My Bernat B79 just allows you to snap on and off the presser feet, but we are going to need to move our needle position so that it is about 1/8 of an inch to the right of the center, which is about 6 millimeters. And now you're going to align the top edge of the border just to the right of the guide on the edge stitch foot. And just like all of our other seams in this project, we want to begin our stitch and then back stitch just a couple of stitches. The top of the border is basically going to ride against the inside of that edge stitch foot. And because we've adjusted our needle over about 1/8 of an inch, it's going to be a consistent and even top stitch. It's going to look lovely. And just remember to remove your straight pins as you're sewing. It's never a good idea to sew over a straight pin For so many reasons, you can damage your presser foot, your needle, and the internal components of your sewing machine. You're just going to stitch the entire length of this top edge and backstitch at the end. And just like before, when you're finished stitching, raise your presser foot and clip your thread tails. Now let's head back over to the pressing station one last time to give our border tea towel a final press. And just like I mentioned earlier, it's always a good idea to sew a seam and then press a seam. So we're going to go ahead and first press our border seams. Now, once you're finished pressing the border seams, let's go ahead and fold our towel in thirds lengthwise. This is exactly how the towel was originally pressed, so you're kind of following along the same lines. I would remind you though that the towel border is more important than the original creases because remember, we want that center poodle puppy dog to be in the center of our towel. So adjust as needed. Well, sewing bees, I really enjoyed making this project and I hope you did too. I cannot wait to see what materials you use. So please snap a photo, post it on social media, and be sure to tag both myself at Sookie Sews and at All About Blanks. If you enjoyed this video and you felt the content was wonderful, then do me a favor and give me a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below what kind of material you're gonna use for your border tea towel. Also, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to this channel. And lastly, if you liked this enough, do me the biggest favor and share it with one of your sewing friends. And until I see you next time, I hope you have a creative day. Bye-bye.